Welcome to Awesome Code. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my video. In this video, we will write a UDP server and a client using sockets in Python. The lowest level of network programming uses a socket. We will write a very simple client server exchange with the UDP. The UDP client sends a string in a UDP datagram to a server, and the server returns a packet of data containing a string. The server needs to listen at a particular address and port. In our client and server program, we will use address, which is a tuple of address and port. The address is a string, which can be a name or an IP address. When our program are just talking to one another on the same machine, we can use the name localhost or the equivalent address string 127.0.0.1. We will send a little data from one process to another and return a little data back to the originator. We will print the time and open a socket. The server will listen for connection to its socket, and the client will write to its socket, which transmits a message to the server. So first we are going to write the UDP server. For this, I'm going to import a socket module, and from datetime import datetime, and now I will set the server address, which is a tuple, and localhost, where our server is running, and the port number 6789. And I will define data size, the max data we can read. So data size set to 4096. And now I'm going to print the message. Server starting at current date, that will be date time dot now. And now I'm going to print the message that the server is waiting for client to connect. So waiting for a client to connect. I will make this uppercase. And now I'm going to create a socket by calling socket method. This method is imported from the socket package. So this will be over here. Our server socket. This will be socket dot socket, and I'm going to pass in socket dot af underscore inet. AF underscore inet means we will create an IP socket. And then will be socket dot sock datagram or dgram. Sock dgram means we will send and receive datagram. In other words, We will use UDP. Now we are going to use bind method, which is also imported from a socket package. Bind binds to it, listen to any data arriving at that IP address and port. So our will be server socket dot bind, and here will be our server address. We are going to pass in server address to this bind method. At this point, the server sits and wait for a datagram to come in by using our receive from method, and get the data in client by using server sockets receive from, and here we are going to pass in our data size. When one arrives, the server wakes up and get both the data and information about the client. And the client variable, this one over here, contains the address and port combination needed to read the client. And then the server will send a reply and close its connection. And we also going to print to our console, print and I will just add some few asterisk signs, add, and now I'm going to get the time, current time, date time dot now method, and the client and here I will print the data and pass in the data coming from client. And now we will our server will reply server socket dot send to, we need to send data in bytes, that's why B is added. Hello from server, and we need to pass in client. And now I'm going to go close the server connection. This will be server dot close, server socket dot close. Now the code for our server application is complete, and I will write a UDP client now. We'll go to other file. The client will have most of the same method as the server, with the exception of bind method. The client sends and then receives, whereas the server receives first. So first I'm going to import socket. Import socket, and from date time import date time. And now we are going to connect to the server, so we need a server address. Server address localhost and the port 6789. That will be, and the port number of the server, and our data size, and we are going to print the message to our console. Client starting at date time now. And now we are going to create the client socket. Same way, socket dot af inet socket dot socdgram for datagram. And now we are going to send a message to server using client socket dot send to method. In bytes, we will just say hi, and we need to pass in server address. Receive the data and server by using client socket dot receive from and data size. Print message to console, print, then couple of asterisk, or I will change for client just pound signs or hash signs, and then add date time dot now, and then server and replied and the data from the server. And then we need to close the client by calling client socket.close. We need to start the server first in its own window or terminal. It will print its greeting and then wait until our client sends it some data. Next step will be to start the client in another terminal or window. It will print its greeting and send data to the server and print the reply and then exit. The name of this file should be UDP. So I will save it as a UDP client. So I need to run my server first. So I'm inside that folder where my server file is. So I will type Python 3 and UDP server.py. And here's the message starting at this time and waiting for a client to connect. So I will start a client uh, on other tab of terminal. Here will also, so I will type the same way, Python 3 UDP client.py and hit enter. And here we get the message client starting at the time, and at this time replied hello from server. And on server side we get the message hi, B is also showing up. So to keep on learning, please subscribe to my YouTube channel Awesome Code and like my video. Keep supporting me and thank you for watching.